Did you know that less than 6% of generative AI evaluations actually considered how humans and AI interact? It's a kind of a shocking number when you think about how intertwined our lives are becoming with these systems. Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we're going to unpack why this matters and what a more rigorous approach to evaluating AI could look like. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into fascinating topics.
Yeah, it is a surprisingly low number, especially considering how rapidly generative AI is being integrated into everything from healthcare and education to social media and even the legal field.
So it's like we're kind of just letting this really powerful new technology loose in the world without really understanding how it's going to behave once it's out there.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. The current state of AI evaluation is a bit like sending a car out on the road without ever crash testing it.
Oh, wow.
We wouldn't do that with a car, and yet we seem to be taking a similar approach with AI.
Right. So we need to figure out a way to crash test these AI systems, so to speak, before they're interacting with real people in real situations. So let's talk about what's wrong with how we're currently evaluating generative AI. What are we missing?
Well, the traditional approach has been to rely on benchmarks, which are kind of like standardized tests for AI.
Okay.
These benchmarks are helpful for comparing different AI models in a controlled environment, but they don't tell us much about how these systems will perform in the real world, where things are much more messy and unpredictable.
So these benchmarks are like testing a car's engine in a lab, but not actually seeing how it handles on a busy highway during rush hour.
Exactly. And that's where the limitations of our current evaluation methods become clear. Real-world scenarios involve human interaction, unpredictable events, and a whole host of other factors that static benchmarks simply don't capture.
And this raises some serious questions about the potential risks of not having a better way to evaluate these systems. What are some real-world examples of where things have gone wrong because of insufficient AI evaluation?
Well, we've already seen examples of AI systems generating inaccurate medical information, which, could have serious consequences for people's health. There have been instances of AI models providing incorrect legal references, which could have implications for legal cases. And there's growing concern about the potential for AI systems to be used to spread misinformation or manipulate people's emotions.
Those are some worrying examples. So what can we do? Where do we even begin to develop a more robust approach to evaluating these systems?
Well, there are valuable lessons to be learned from other fields that have had to grapple with safety-critical systems for decades.
Okay.
Think about fields like aviation, medicine, or the automotive industry.
Right.
They've developed rigorous evaluation methods that prioritize real-world testing, iterative refinement, and a strong emphasis on safety and accountability.
It sounds like we need to take a page from their playbook and figure out how to apply those principles to the world of AI. What are some specific examples of how these other fields approach evaluation?
Let's take clinical trials in medicine as an example. Before a new drug is approved for use, it has to undergo rigorous testing in multiple phases, each designed to assess its safety and effectiveness in carefully controlled environments.
Right. So it's not just about testing the drug in a lab. It's about understanding how it performs in the real world with real patients and all the complexities that come with that.
Precisely. And that same principle applies to AI. We need to move beyond these isolated benchmarks and create evaluation environments that simulate real-world contexts. We need to see how AI systems perform in situations that mimic how they'll actually be used.
That makes perfect sense. Are there other examples we can draw inspiration from?
Consider the automotive industry. The definition of a safe car has evolved dramatically over time. Early cars lacked many of the safety features we now consider standard.
Like seatbelts, for example.
Yes, seatbelts, airbags, anti-lock brakes, and all sorts of other features. As we gained more experience with cars and unfortunately saw the consequences of accidents, we continuously refined our understanding of what makes a car safe. This iterative process, where safety standards are constantly being updated and improved based on real-world feedback and evolving risks, is something we need to emulate in the field of AI.
So our definition of a safe AI needs to be just as dynamic and responsive to real-world data and feedback. But we need to make sure these evaluations are impartial and objective. How do we ensure that the people developing these AI systems aren't influencing the evaluations in their favor?
You've hit on a critical point. We need strong, independent institutions, similar to the FDA for food and drugs or the NHTSA for vehicles, that can set standards for AI, conduct independent testing, and hold companies accountable.
Right. We need some kind of external oversight to make sure these evaluations are being done properly and that safety is being prioritized. It sounds like we need to invest in building a whole ecosystem around AI evaluation. It's not just about developing new metrics. It's about creating the infrastructure and culture that prioritize safety and responsibility.
Absolutely. And that investment needs to happen on multiple fronts. We need to support research into new evaluation methods, build shared tools and platforms for testing AI systems, and develop expertise in AI safety and evaluation. This requires collaboration between researchers, policymakers, industry leaders, and the public.
So we've talked about the limitations of traditional benchmarks and the need to learn from other fields, but evaluating generative AI poses some unique challenges, doesn't it? What makes these systems particularly difficult to assess?
You're right. Generative AI throws a few curveballs our way. One of the biggest challenges is its inherent open-endedness. Unlike traditional AI systems that are designed for very specific tasks, generative AI is incredibly versatile and adaptable.
What do you mean by open-endedness?
Well, you can use the same generative AI model to write a poem, compose music, translate languages, and even write code. This incredible flexibility makes it really tough to define precise targets for evaluation. How do you measure success when the potential applications are so vast and constantly evolving?
So it's like trying to hit a moving target. The goalposts are constantly shifting.
Exactly. And that's not the only challenge. Generative AI is also non-deterministic, meaning that its behavior can be unpredictable. Even with the same input, you might get different outputs from the same model.
So even if you test a model in a very controlled environment, it might behave differently in the real world.
That's right. It's like trying to predict the weather. You can get a general sense of the forecast, but there's always an element of uncertainty. And to make things even more complex, these systems are constantly evolving and learning through their interactions with the world.
So we need to find ways to evaluate not just how an AI performs at a single point in time, but also how it changes and adapts over time.
Precisely. We need long-term behavioral evaluation approaches that can track these systems over time and assess whether their evolution aligns with our values and goals.
So it's not enough to look at how these systems perform in a controlled lab setting. We need to understand how they behave in the wild, how they interact with humans over extended periods, and how they evolve as they learn from those interactions.
You've got it. And this is where things get really exciting. To build a more robust evaluation science for generative AI, we need to embrace these complexities and develop methods that are up to the task.
That's a great point. But unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this part of our deep dive. Be sure to join us for part 2, where we'll explore what a more rigorous evaluation science for generative AI could actually look like. Don't forget to like and subscribe to The Deep Dive for more explorations into fascinating topics. We'll see you soon.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
So in the last part, we were talking about the need for a more robust way to evaluate generative AI, especially as these systems become more complex and integrated into our lives. You mentioned the need for a socio-technical lens when thinking about AI evaluation. What does that actually mean in practice?
Well, it means we need to move beyond simply evaluating AI systems based on their, technical performance.
Okay.
We have to consider the broader social and ethical implications of these systems.
So instead of just focusing on metrics like accuracy or speed, we need to think about how AI systems might impact society, culture, and even individual well-being.
Exactly. For instance, imagine we're evaluating a chatbot designed for customer service. We can't just measure how quickly and efficiently it resolves customer queries.
Right.
We also need to assess whether it unintentionally discriminates against certain groups of customers or perpetuates existing biases based on the data it was trained on.
That's a really important point. It's like we need to consider the human factor in AI evaluation. It's not just about how well the AI performs in isolation, but how it interacts with people in the real world.
Absolutely. And we also need to recognize that different AI applications require different evaluation methods. A chatbot designed for medical advice needs to be evaluated very differently than one designed for creative writing. The risks and considerations are completely different.
That makes a lot of sense. You wouldn't evaluate a race car and a minivan using the same criteria. They're designed for different purposes and operate in different environments. So how do we go about creating these context-specific evaluations? What are some new methods or approaches that we need to develop?
This is where the creativity and rigor of the AI research community comes in. We need a diverse toolkit of evaluation methods that can address the unique challenges of each application. For instance, when evaluating a generative AI system designed to create educational content, we might use techniques from education research and cognitive psychology to measure how well the AI personalizes learning experiences for different types of learners, or whether the AI reinforces existing biases in the curriculum.
It's fascinating to think about how we can borrow from these other fields and apply those methods to AI. It really highlights the interdisciplinary nature of this challenge.
It definitely is. And it's not just about measuring AI's performance in isolation. We need to understand how humans and AI work together, what the consequences of that collaboration might be, and how to ensure that these collaborations are beneficial.
It sounds like we need to move beyond simply evaluating the AI itself and start evaluating the entire socio-technical system in which the AI operates.
Exactly. And that requires a multifaceted approach. Remember our earlier example of AI systems being used to spread misinformation. To truly understand and address that risk, we need to combine different types of measurement. We might start with traditional metrics of factual accuracy, but we also need methods for assessing the believability of AI-generated content to humans. We need to understand how susceptible people are to believing AI-generated misinformation.
So we need to understand not just what the AI is saying, but also how people are interpreting and reacting to what the AI is saying.
Precisely. And then we need to take it a step further and understand how that information spreads within a given system, like a social media platform or an online community.
It's like we need to trace the ripple effects of AI-generated content and see how it impacts the dynamics of information flow and social interaction.
Exactly. We need to break down complex concepts like misinformation or bias into smaller, more measurable components. It's like taking a blood test. You're not just getting one overall score. You're getting detailed information about different aspects of your health.
That's a great analogy. But one thing that strikes me is that AI is a constantly moving target. These systems are always evolving, learning, and adapting. How do we ensure that our evaluation methods keep pace with these rapid advancements?
That's a crucial question, and it highlights the need for an iterative feedback loop in AI evaluation.
Can you explain what you mean by an iterative feedback loop?
We can't just evaluate these systems once and consider it done. We need to continuously monitor their performance in real-world settings, gather data on their behavior and impact, and then use that feedback to refine our pre-deployment evaluation methods. It's a cycle of continuous improvement, just like in other fields.
So we need to treat AI evaluation as an ongoing process of learning and adaptation, not a one-time event.
That's right. Imagine if we only crash-tested cars once when they were first designed and never updated our safety standards based on real-world data.
Wow.
We would have never developed all the safety features that have saved countless lives.
That's a sobering thought. It really underscores the importance of this continuous feedback loop in AI evaluation. But with all this talk about risks and challenges, it's easy to lose sight of the potential benefits of AI. Why should we be optimistic about the future of AI, especially given these complex evaluation challenges?
That's an important point, and it's important to remember that AI has the potential to revolutionize our world in positive ways. We've already seen glimpses of this potential in areas like healthcare, education, and scientific discovery.
We've seen AI help diagnose diseases earlier, personalize learning experiences for students, and accelerate the pace of scientific research.
Exactly, and this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
But to fully realize this positive potential, we need to build trust in these systems. And trust comes from transparency, accountability, and a demonstrable commitment to safety and responsibility.
So it's not just about developing impressive AI, it's about developing AI that we can trust and rely on. And that trust depends on having robust evaluation methods that ensure AI is being used safely and ethically.
You hit the nail on the head. It's not about whether AI will be transformative, it's about whether we can create the conditions for that transformation to be positive and beneficial for everyone.
That's a powerful statement. It feels like we're on the verge of a new era of technological advancement, one that requires a thoughtful and responsible approach to evaluation. But I'm curious, what are some concrete steps we can take right now to move towards this more mature evaluation science for AI? What should researchers, policymakers, and industry leaders be focusing on in the near future?
Those are excellent questions, and they lead perfectly into the final part of our deep dive, where we'll explore some actionable steps we can take to build a more trustworthy and beneficial AI-powered future. Join us for Part 3, where we'll delve into these crucial next steps.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been exploring this urgent need for a more rigorous evaluation science for generative AI, and now, it's time to get practical.
Yeah.
In the last part, you were teasing some actionable steps we can take to move towards a more mature approach to evaluating these, increasingly complex AI systems. Where do we begin?
Well, it's going to require a collective effort, and I think one of the most crucial steps is shifting our focus from evaluating individual AI models to evaluating entire AI systems.
I'm not sure I follow. What's the difference between evaluating a model and evaluating a system?
Think about it like cooking. Evaluating a model is like assessing the quality of individual ingredients. You might have the freshest vegetables, the finest spices, but that doesn't guarantee a delicious meal.
Right? You need to consider the whole recipe, how those ingredients are combined, the cooking process, the presentation, and ultimately how it tastes to the people eating it.
Exactly. Evaluating an AI system means considering all the components, the model itself, the data it's trained on, the user interface, the specific context in which it's being deployed. We need to look at how all these elements interact and what the overall impact is on individuals and society.
So it's about taking a more holistic view and understanding that an AI system is more than just the sum of its parts. It's about how it functions within a larger ecosystem. What other steps can we take to make AI evaluation more robust?
Well, we desperately need to develop a shared language and standardized metrics for evaluating these systems. This will allow for more consistent and comparable assessments across different applications and research groups.
It's like establishing a universal system of measurement, like the metric system, so that everyone is speaking the same language. It would be chaotic if every scientist was using different units of measurement.
Precisely. We also need to create more realistic and robust testing environments. Static benchmarks aren't enough. We need dynamic, interactive testing scenarios that mimic real-world situations as closely as possible.
It's like creating a flight simulator, but for AI. You want to be able to test how the system performs under pressure in different environments and with different types of user interaction.
Exactly. And we can't stop at pre-deployment testing. We also need to invest in post-deployment monitoring and evaluation. We need to be constantly watching these systems once they're out in the world, gathering data on how they're being used, what their impact is, and whether they're meeting our expectations for safety and responsibility.
So it's not a one-and-done deal. It's about ongoing observation and adaptation. We need to learn from how these systems behave in the wild and adjust our evaluation methods accordingly. This all sounds incredibly challenging. Who is ultimately responsible for making these changes happen?
It's going to require a joint effort from researchers, policymakers, industry leaders, and even the public. Each group has a crucial role to play.
Let's break that down. What specifically can each group do?
Researchers need to be at the forefront of developing new evaluation methods, conducting rigorous studies, and sharing their findings openly. They need to be pushing the boundaries of AI evaluation and coming up with creative solutions to these complex challenges.
So it's about driving innovation in the field of AI evaluation itself. What about policymakers? What role do they have to play?
Policymakers have the critical task of creating regulations and guidelines that encourage responsible AI development and deployment. They need to ensure that AI systems are subject to appropriate levels of scrutiny and that there are mechanisms in place to hold companies accountable.
So it's about establishing clear rules of the road for AI, making sure there are safeguards in place to protect the public. What about the companies that are actually developing these systems? What's their responsibility?
Industry leaders need to make safety and responsibility a core part of their AI development process. They need to adopt these robust evaluation methods we've been discussing, invest in training their employees on ethical AI development, and be transparent with the public about the limitations of their systems.
So it's not just about building cool new technology. It's about building it in a way that benefits society and minimizes potential harms.
Exactly. And finally, the public needs to be an active participant in this conversation. We need to stay informed about AI, engage in discussions about its ethical implications, and hold companies and policymakers accountable for ensuring that AI is used responsibly.
So we all have a role to play in shaping the future of AI. It's not something that just happens to us. We have a voice and a responsibility to make sure this powerful technology is used for good. This has been an incredible deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, and it's clear that we're just at the beginning of this journey, but it's a journey worth taking. With a collective commitment to responsibility, transparency, and a rigorous evaluation science, I'm optimistic that we can navigate the challenges and build an AI-powered future that is both exciting and beneficial for everyone. What aspects of AI evaluation stand out to you as particularly important? What kind of future do you envision for AI? And what role does evaluation play in shaping that future? This has been The Deep Dive, and we'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.